Hello and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to talk about all the books I read in the second half of August. So hello, welcome back. I am so glad you decided to click on this video. Like I said, today I'm going to talk about all the books that I read in the second half of August. I will link above and down below my video from the first half of August where I read 6 books. And I will say my second half of the month got to be a lot busier. I read a lot more, actually over twice the number I read in the beginning of the month. So let's just get started with some stats. So overall, in the second half of the month, I read 13 books, and that gives me 19 for the month, which I feel like might be the most I've ever read in a single month. And it's kind of wild because I really was struggling towards the beginning of August to read. I don't know. I wasn't finishing books. I was getting bored easily. So I'm pretty pleased with the fact that I was able to kind of make up for that time. It also helps that I was just off for an entire week that I spent at my parents' house doing absolutely nothing except reading. So of those 13, I had 3 5 stars, 3 4 stars, 5 3 stars, and 2 2 stars. So kind of had quantity over quality here. A lot of these were not books that I liked too much. They were just fine, or there were a couple that I really didn't like, but we will get there. So let's just get into the video. So picking up where I left off at the last video, the next book that I read was The Women by Kristen Hanna. Now this book does not come out till February, so this is a very early review, which I don't really always do, but I really wanted to read this. Unfortunately, it was a huge letdown. I gave this 2 stars. This was not the book for me, and I'm kind of confused about how many people are loving this. I'm thrilled for them, but I am like, huh? What did I miss? So this follows a woman named Frankie who comes from a really well-to-do family. Her father is high-ranking in the Navy, and this is all taking place in the early 60s, late 60s? I'm so bad at stuff. But she ends up signing up to go to Vietnam, and she's a nurse. And so her brother had joined the Air Force, and his parents, everybody was so proud of him, gonna go to Vietnam, joining the Air Force, and then his plane gets shot down, and he dies relatively early. I mean, this isn't really a spoiler, it's in the beginning of the book. So she decides she's gonna go, and no one in her family is okay with this. They think she's making a horrible decision, and like, women don't go to Vietnam, and she ends up having to join the army because she doesn't have that much experience. She's like just graduated nursing school and has just been at a hospital for just a few months, I believe. So anyways, she goes to Vietnam, and as you can imagine, it's terrible. And it kind of goes, there's a lot of the stuff that's happening in Vietnam, and then what it's like once she returns to the US and realizes that most of the country is against the war, and kind of, I guess, takes it out on the vets, and how there's just not really any support for them once they return, and like the trauma they're going through, particularly for women, because a lot of people didn't even know that women were in Vietnam at all. Sounds like that would be a great book, right? So let me tell you what didn't work for me. Frankie is one of the most boring protagonists that I've ever read about. She has like no personality at all, and this book is over 400 pages, and I feel like I only knew surface level things about her even at the end of the book. Additionally, for a book called The Women, a lot of her story is wrapped around the men in her life, which I don't feel like is a great thing to be showing. I mean, of course there's going to be other men in her life and stuff, but it feels like that's a big focus of the story, which kind of rubbed me the wrong way. I was wanting like a super feministy story of this brave woman that went to Vietnam. I also absolutely hated the ending, and when I say the ending, I mean like the last 5 pages. I was like rolling my eyes. It was just, there was so much about this book I didn't like, and I don't want to ruin it for someone that's excited to read it. So Please check out my Goodreads review. There are spoilers, but if you're not planning to read this anyways, or you were on the fence and you don't care about spoilers, check that out. I really, again, I don't want to take away anyone's excitement for this book because I know a lot of people really, really love Kristen Hanna. So that is all I'm going to say. This was just a big miss for me. And once you read it when it comes out, or if you've already read it, you also had an early copy, and you want to discuss it, let me know because I have a lot of thoughts and opinions. Because I have 13 books to talk about, I'm going to skip through some of them quickly that I just feel like they were fine. I don't have a lot to say on. And one of those is going to be the next one. That is Hotel 21 by Senta Rich. This was cute. It's about a woman who has always kind of like gotten a rush off of stealing from the hotel rooms that she is cleaning. She's a housekeeper at a hotel. This is her 21st hotel, and what she does is she gets hired at a hotel, she cleans for a little bit, earns the trust of those around her, has like different personas she tries on, and then she'll take just like small stuff, like nothing even valuable. It's definitely like a mental thing versus like she wants to steal something expensive. So when she gets accused of it, the people are like, well, she would never. We know her. She is fantastic. And then right after that happens, then she makes up an excuse why she needs to quit, like a sick family member, and she bounces onto the next hotel. So this is her 21st hotel, and she kind of gets more than she's used to as far as friendships, relationships within the hotel, and kind of how she goes on from there. I thought it was cute. I gave it 3 stars. It was a sweet story and a little bit funny. I was expecting something different, but I ended up enjoying it. I mean, I would recommend it if you just want something short and sweet. Next, I read The Chateau by Jaclyn Goldis. This was my book club's pick, and I will say I was very annoyed when this was our pick. Everybody voted for this because I did not want to read this based on what I had heard from people, and I've just read so many sort of like these locked room mysteries that I was like, another one about like college friends on vacation and somebody's not telling the truth, and I was just like not excited for this. But I will say I was pleasantly surprised for most of the book, because it went a whole different direction that I wasn't expecting, and I really did enjoy it for the most part. However, the last like 20% was not my scene. It got a little bit ridiculous, and it got to be just like, wait, what? So I personally gave this 3 stars. If you don't know, it's about a group of old friends from college that studied abroad in France together, and they go visit one of their grandmothers at this chateau they used to stay at when they were growing up. And this grandmother owns it, and she's very wealthy, and then one night they're there, she dies. And the grandmother had kind of like summoned them all there because she had some big announcement to tell them. Yeah, this was okay. I really wish it had a different ending because it just got out of control. And I mean, if you read a lot of like thrillers, you know that there's a point when you're just like, please stop. Please just make this a little more realistic. But unfortunately, this one just went a little too far for me to enjoy. Next, I read Prom Mom by Laura Lipman. I had put this on my list of like thrillers to look forward to or something like that. Not really a thriller, guys. I'm sorry if I led you astray. This really doesn't have much thrilling at all, except maybe a little bit at the end. I thought this was fine. It's about kind of what you might think, a woman who is sort of having to revisit the past in which she had served time for giving birth on prom night and leaving her baby to die. She went to juvie, and then she like began her life elsewhere, but she comes back to the town she's from and is kind of starting over, and she ends up meeting with her ex-boyfriend who was like the baby daddy. And so there's just a lot going on. It's a pretty quick read. Again, I didn't dislike it. I gave it 3 stars. It was not what I was expecting at all. And I mean, I would still recommend it. It was a decent story. Not a thriller though. Next, I read Camp Damascus by Chuck Tingle. This is my first book by Chuck Tingle. I gave this 3 stars. I think this is also his first like horror book because I think he writes like weird smut. Yeah, like the title of another one of his books is I'm Gay for My Living Billionaire Jet Plane. I don't know. Space Raptor Butt Trilogy. So I'm not really sure if I will ever read another book by him because that's just not my scene. It sounds like a parody of smut, but it's still not really my scene. But this was an okay horror novel. It's about a teenager from a super, super religious background and a like gay conversion therapy camp nearby, and just kind of like these demons that this girl starts to see, and like what are they and why can no one else see them, and yeah. It was fine. It was a book. It was nothing that I would want to read again or probably would recommend, but if someone was like into kind of like off-color horror, I would say sure, go for it. 3 stars for me. Next, I read The Mystery Guest by Nita Prose. This is the second book in the Maid series, and I really enjoyed it. It was cute. This comes out in November, and if you liked The Maid, you'll like this one. That's basically the best kind of description I will give, because The Maid is kind of, I don't want to say silly, but the main character, Molly, is just a little off. She can't really read social cues well, and some people really didn't like her as a character when that book came out. I thought she was fun. I really liked reading about her, but again, it's going to be the same sort of situation. If that is something you don't want to read about, then you're not going to like this, but if you enjoyed that book, I do think you'll like this one. Molly is working still at the hotel, and there is someone else that drops dead, and while Molly is not the one that is under suspicion this time, it is someone else in her close circle, so she has to try to figure out who did it. Plus, it's in her hotel, so she wants to know as well. So I really liked this. There was like some flashback parts because I don't want to say too much because I don't want to like spoil anything inadvertently, but I thought this was cute, and again, if you liked the first one, you're gonna like this one. I ended up giving this 4 stars overall. Next, I read Someday Maybe by Onyi Nabweneli. This was like one of the most powerful books that I've read. It has a pretty simple premise. It's about a woman who loses her husband to suicide and just her grief. She is from a Nigerian family. Her family is really supportive, but they also want her to start healing, and honestly, that's the basics. That's really all you need to know. This is very slow-paced, is very character-driven. It kind of goes back and forth between the past of her and her husband like meeting and falling in love, and then how she's doing in the present. This was such a real and like raw portrayal of grief, and there were times when I was just like, oh my god, you are exhausting, to the main character, but like, that's how it is. Grief is waves, and it comes and goes at different times, and like, you can't get out of bed for a long time, and like, people just deal with it in their own way. And so it's like when her friends and family were starting to get frustrated with her because she was like not willing to do anything months later, like even take little baby steps. It was frustrating, but that's just how it is. You felt like the real emotions that were going on in this household. And I just thought it was like a really beautiful story because, you know, it does follow her through some healing with some setbacks and such, but like it also deals a lot with her awful, awful mother-in-law who was just a nightmare. And there was also a huge issue for her because he was from a very like well-to-do family, and he was white, and she was from a black Nigerian family who also were pretty well-to-do, but I guess, I don't know. It was really a good story. It's so sad though, so like huge trigger warnings for suicidal ideation and like extreme grief. So please proceed with caution, but I gave this 5 stars and I would recommend it if you are in the right headspace to handle a book like this. Next, I read Bright Young Women by Jessica Null. I gave this 4 stars. I listened to the audiobook and it was narrated by Sutton Foster, who I just love, so I really enjoyed the audiobook for that reason. This kind of follows the Ted Bundy story. They don't actually say his name, but when he was in Tallahassee at Florida State and the murders there and this woman going back to like revisit her past. I thought it was really interesting, this kind of like fictionalized version of Ted Bundy's massacre there in Tallahassee. I liked this book. I know a lot of people have really enjoyed her previous book, Luckiest Girl Alive. I haven't read it, but I kind of want to now because I did really enjoy this. It was a good thriller, and while maybe the mystery aspect is missing, it was very thrilling. And I would definitely call this a crime thriller versus like any domestic thriller or anything like that. Next, I read Black Sheep by Rachel Harrison. This I gave 5 stars to, and I absolutely loved it. This is sort of like dark comedy horror, for lack of a better genre. I guess it's technically horror, but there's definitely some funny moments and stuff that like, you're like, wait, satirical. That's the word I'm looking for. Satirical horror? It's about a woman who has escaped from a religious cult, and she one day in the mail gets an invitation to her cousin's wedding, and she has no idea because she hasn't spoken to anyone from her family in quite some time, and so she doesn't really know why she was invited, and she decides she's gonna go though. Especially when she finds out that her cousin is marrying her former boyfriend who wouldn't leave the cult with her. So that is why they broke up. This is such a great story. The end, I mean, it definitely gets a little spooky scary towards the end of the book, but I really enjoyed this. That is kind of all I will say about that. I gave it 5 stars. This is my first book by Rachel Harrison, and I know she is a favorite author of Michaela Reed's, and she is a booktuber I have come to just love watching, and so I'm so happy that I love this book, and I will definitely be reading more from Rachel Harrison. I can't wait for this book to come out because I loved it. This is definitely a book I could see myself buying a copy of, even though I've already read it. I really, really liked it. Sorry, I'm gonna try to speed this up. The next book I read was Animal Farm by George Orwell. I don't really feel like I need to give too much detail on this, about a farm where the animals decide to overthrow the farmers and kind of run their own situation, but then the pigs kind of take charge and they end up in the same situation they started with. Instead of humans, they have pigs ruling them. It's a classic, so there's not much to say, but I hadn't read it before, and I actually really liked it. It's such a short little story, and I had it sitting on my shelf for ages, and I just wanted to like kind of pick up a book that I could begin and end in the same day, and so it worked out really well. I liked it, gave it 5 stars. The next book I read was The Conleys of County Down by Tracy Lang. This I had some issues with. I gave it 3 stars. Mainly, I just hated one of the main characters. This was about a woman who had just gotten out of prison, and she tries to, start getting her life back on track, and the cop that arrested her basically realizes that he probably shouldn't, because they were really going after like this drug kingpin guy, and instead she went to prison because she wouldn't say names, basically. So he's kind of like trying to make it up to her, and honestly, he's the character that I just could not stand. He's so like, girls never go for nice guys type, and I just hated him. And so that made it really hard because he was a main character and I'm supposed to be rooting for him. This was billed as more of a family drama, but I personally didn't. I mean, I guess there was family drama, but it was way too heavy on the romance for what I was expecting and looking forward to. I still gave it 3 stars, but it was not as good as its predecessor, We Are the Brennans. Next, I read Foe by Ian Reid. This is the same author that wrote We Spread, which is one of my favorite books of 2023, and he also wrote I'm Thinking of Ending Things, which I've read and was a Netflix movie that's been very popular. I gave this 4 stars. I really did enjoy it. I just thought it was not as like a gut punch as We Spread or other kind of books in this same genre. It's like sci-fi-ish, sci-fi horror speculative. It's about this husband and wife who live on this farm, very separate from everyone, and one night this man comes to their house and says that the husband has been chosen for this like journey to space where he's gonna live there for like 2 years, and he's like, wait, what? But it's like a thing you can't say no to. It's some like government project. And so while he's gone, they're gonna have a replica of him live in the house with his wife and basically be him while he's gone, so his wife is not alone. The guy comes and goes from their house, but eventually he like moves in, and it goes from there because this guy is like all up in their life, and then his wife starts to act funny. So there's a lot going on. The ending, I kind of saw it coming, but like I wasn't mad about it. I thought it was interesting because there is one twist at the end that I definitely didn't see coming that was really clever and I really enjoyed. So 4 stars for this one. I would recommend it, and it's also pretty short. And the last book I read was The Clinic by Kate Quinn. This book does not come out until February, but it doesn't matter because you shouldn't read it. I gave it 2 stars. Where to begin? I'm gonna keep this quick. It's about a woman named Meg whose sister Haley is a country music star, and she has allegedly died by suicide while she was in rehab. And Meg is like, there's no way. She would never. They are estranged, but she's like, I know my sister, and that's not something that she would ever do. So she also has a kind of drug addiction and pill and alcohol dependency. So she's like, I'm gonna check myself into rehab at the same place and kind of like figure out what's going on and also get some help with my problems. And her employer like agrees to pay for it and all of that. So she goes there and is trying to basically figure out what happened to her sister. It was just so far-fetched. It's like this whole rehab only has like 5 people, and it's supposed to be for like rich and famous people. So like I get that it would be pretty empty, but like no. They also like didn't strip search her when she came in. Like I've never been to rehab, but like I've seen enough to know that like they're very thorough about these things. She just like had some oxy foil packs like in her bra, and that was that. Like, I just don't, what? They did not take those for you. She also like brought in like fake urine to pass drug tests. I just like don't understand how any of this would have happened. So it's like very, very unrealistic. It was also like over 400 pages, so much that doesn't need to happen. And I was kind of skimming by the end and kind of hate reading. Unfortunately, yeah, this is not a book I would recommend. It does have like a kind of creepy, cool setting, but like that's about the only nice thing I can say about it. We made it. Those are the 13 books that I read in the second half of August. I hope my reading's a little more even in September because I would love to just have this video be a little shorter, but what can you do? I just want to talk about the books that I read, so thanks for watching. I appreciate you. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up, and I would love it if you would subscribe. I would love to know what your favorite book from the month of August was. So let me know in the comments. I would love to hear from you. Anything you'd recommend. What didn't you like in August? Let's talk. Thank you so much once again, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.